Greetings, College Composition. This is Professor Kole here with your video lecture on compare and contrast essays. What I would like to discuss today is pre-writing. Alright, and by pre-writing I mean I have a specific pre-writing strategy and organizational structure which lends itself quite well to compare and contrast, in my opinion. And in addition to pre-writing, I want to talk about overall essay structure. All right, you have two options for essay structure in this compare and contrast essay. Okay, so let's begin with compare and contrast. It's pretty obvious, I think, what we mean by compare and contrast, but let's just distinguish the words from each other first. Compare is a verb, and it means to compare two things in how are they similar. Expressing their similarities is a demonstration of comparisons. Okay, so a potential comparison that you might do is in online shopping. Okay, you might find the similar price ranges on different websites for a product that you're looking at. Okay, you could be comparing prices. Contrast is also a verb, and it implies that you are juxtaposing two things, but contrast is the antonym of compare, meaning it has the opposite meaning of compare. It means that you juxtapose two items and express their differences. Okay? And because this is a compare and contrast essay, it is my request that you all demonstrate both comparisons and demonstrate things that contrast. Okay, pre-writing. What you want to do is choose a topic. There are a number of topics listed in your book in chapter 15 under the writing process. You may choose any of those, or if there's a compare and contrast which you'd like to engage with that's not in the book, run that topic by me and I'll let you know if it will work or not. I just like to talk it out with you a little bit. How are you planning on performing? Compare and contrast to be sure you have enough information to write an essay. Okay. The essay, again, should be 500 words to 800 words, as was the case for cause and effect. Pre-writing. Let's think about the two things that we would like to compare and contrast. So what I'm going to do is draw a chart. All right, and this will help you organize your information for pre-writing and for organizing the essay structure as step 2. Okay, so what I've chosen to compare and contrast is two approaches to the teaching of writing. All right, two approaches to the teaching of writing. And the first approach to the teaching of writing I'm going to discuss is teaching English as a second language students. Teaching English as a second language students. My master's degree is in teaching English to speakers of other languages, so that's where my expertise and my focus lies. However, within that focus, I am quite interested in composition studies, and composition studies have relevance for both international speakers or speakers of other languages, learning English as their second language, or third, or fifth in some cases. Some of these people are what's called polyglots. Polyglot is someone who speaks many, many languages. But also within composition studies, I've done some research in the writing instruction of native English speakers. And that, of course, would be all of you. All right, so teaching native speaking students. All right, so I have two items, item 1 and item 2. Of course, to perform compare and contrast, you must have two things. Otherwise, you can't compare a single thing to nothing. All right. What we want to consider now is what's called points of comparison. Alright, so for the entirety of this unit, we will be talking about points of comparison. And I will abbreviate that as POC. points of comparison. So this is when your pre-writing process continues, and we can start to see a chart form. Okay. Well, what are the points of comparison? Remember, you must show comparisons and contrasts. So let's start with the things that are different. Oftentimes, people are most interested in the differences between things. Think of the political discussions, how polarized those discussions are. People, for some reason, are more interested in differences than similarities. So you may want to start with differences to grab your reader's interest. But the first difference, which I'd like to talk about, is the focus on grammar. As fluent speakers of English, you all don't really need the level of grammar instruction that international students need. All right, I have target structures requirements because I do want to raise the grammatical awareness of native English speakers, but you all have this ability within your minds already, all of you native English speakers. So I don't focus on grammar very much. Okay, different grammatical concepts such as the passive, syntax, subject, verb, object, word order, all of these different aspects of grammar, all the little details of grammar which native speakers can produce in their sleep are quite complex and require an extensive level of grammatical instruction. Okay? So the focus on grammar is primary, detailed, some of the other descriptor words which you might use to express English as a second language, focus on grammar, could be, let me think, well, I'm obviously engaged with the pre-writing process. So these are two fairly good starting points. These two could be two supporting details of focus on grammar for English as a second language students. Maybe some more ideas will come to mind as we continue. Teaching native speaking students, the focus on grammar is secondary. Okay? I don't focus on detail, so in terms of detail, you might consider the number of grammatical constructions, is extensive. Okay, both beginner level and advanced, depending on the skill level of the speaker, while our focus is secondary for native English speakers, and the number of grammatical constructions is limited and advanced. Okay? So when I teach my ESL students, I move into the nominal clauses near the midterm, while teaching native speakers, I move into the nominal clauses, which you all have practiced for cause and effect. I move into that on the first essay. Okay? So you all are on a much higher level of proficiency. Okay? And we could even use proficiency as a potential compare and contrast, or level of ability. Okay? The student's level of ability influences what grammatical constructions I approach. And as you can see, these two concepts contrast. All right. Our first point of comparison was focus on grammar. Second point of comparison is cultural sensitivity. Okay. If you've ever met with or spoken with people from around the world, you may have noticed that we speak a little bit differently. And I don't mean just in terms of language. I mean, how direct are you being? Are you making eye contact for an extended period? Or are you a little bit uncomfortable around the opposite sex? Do you not feel comfortable talking in class? All right. Certain cultures don't like competition. So review games like Jeopardy, in which we count up the points and a certain team wins and loses with rewards and penalties for winning or losing. Some students can't really function mentally within that environment. It raises what's called the affective filter. The affective filter is relevant for both English-speaking students and English as a second language students. The affective filter means that you get nervous, you clam up, and you're uncomfortable, and if you're doing movements like this and not feeling very good, well, then no meaningful learning can occur in your mind because you're too distracted by discomfort. Okay? So triggers for the affective filter are quite different. Things like group work, competition, individual speaking time of students. You have to be very careful about which culture these students are coming from. Students from Asian cultures typically, okay, people who grew up in an Asian country, they typically do not want to vocalize their opinions to the professor. Their education system is very much designed around rote memorization and listening to the teacher and not talking in class. So oftentimes I have a pretty significant level of difficulty in getting some of my Asian students to speak in class. It doesn't mean they're not paying attention or aren't engaged with the material. It's just that public speaking is not something that comes natural to them, thus raising the affective filter. Well, everyone in my class is quite Americanized. Most of you, if not all of you, were born in the United States, and all of you are completely fluent and have what's called acculturated. You all are products of the American culture environment. There are many American cultures, but myself being an American and all of you being Americans really eliminates this concept of culture clash. Okay? So I have to worry about culture clash with my ESL students. Okay? Whereas since we all come from American culture in the United States here, I don't have to worry about culture clash with my students. Still have to worry about personality issues and any of that but the conflicts aren't founded in cultural differences. Okay? So absence of cultural differences . Absence of cultural distance, I really can not ignore cultural sensitivity, but since we're engaged with the same culture, we're on the same level playing field, and I don't have to be sensitive to culturally offending any American student. Okay? All right. So, level ground of cultures eliminates culture clash. There's no potential for culture clash. So when I'm designing my assignments for native-speaking English students, I don't have to think about cultural sensitivity because we're all Americans. All right, our third and final point of comparison will be similarities. Okay? Similarities. So I have two differences and one similarity. Well, we've talked a bit about rhetorical strategies or rhetorical principles. Well, this is kind of a consequence of culture clash. Because my students are coming from other cultures, my ESL students that is, they come from cultures which write differently and express themselves differently. Asians oftentimes will write in a pattern that looks very much like this. All right, Asian individuals, for the most part, are not direct. Americans and Eastern Europeans are about as direct as it gets in the entire planet. So our writing style is very much up and down. Okay, well, it sounds like these are going to contrast, right? But remember, my main topic is teaching. So I could contrast the different writing strategies, possibly up here. Could possibly make itself into cultural sensitivity. But my main topic is teaching. And I teach rhetorical strategies and rhetorical principles in the exact same way, regardless if I'm speaking to native students or non-native students. And I do that because readers in the American culture are expecting a very top-down approach, very direct approach. Thesis, topic sentences, supporting details. Okay, that might seem very obvious as a completely predictable rhetorical style. And Asians think that it's a little bit elementary, actually. They read the newspaper and think, well, there's nothing left to inference. These people are writing too directly. This is like a child's book. Okay, so they have that culture clash when they write indirectly. Teachers will say, get on topic. Okay, get to the point. All right, well, I have to teach the same kind of rhetorical strategies. And I do it within the frameworks of cause and effect, argumentation, compare and contrast, classification, extended definition. Okay, these are all different rhetorical strategies or patterns. Okay, and regardless of my student's background, I teach the American rhetorical strategies. Okay, so we have 2 items which contrast and 2 which compare. And it doesn't matter what your mix is like, but all that does matter is that you have similarities and differences. Okay, so this is a completed pre-writing chart. And if you can complete a chart like this, then you are ready to move forward into organizational strategies. All right. So our organizational strategies will be directly reflected in the pre-writing that we've already accomplished. Okay? So you have 2 options for organizing your compare and contrast essay. All right. So I'm going to have to erase this to illustrate for you how organization will be accomplished. So I'm going to erase the details, but I'm going to keep my topics, ESL students, and native speaking students. Okay. So here are my items, which I'm comparing and contrasting, and here are my points of comparison. All right, you have 2 options for organizing yourself. You have what's called the point-by-point organization, and you have what's called side-by-side organization. Okay. Regardless of which points of comparison you pick, and regardless of which items you pick, you can insert the information into either one of these organizational strategies. All right, point by point is probably what is more common. So you will have an introduction paragraph, and you will be moving forward into 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion. 5 paragraphs will satisfy the requirement. Okay, so in point by point, you blend the items that you're comparing and contrasting. So you will have ESL student and grammar, and you will have native speaking student and grammar. Okay, and remember this is contrast. These items contrast. Alright? First paragraph is complete. And remember, you have all the details already. So you're just going to insert the details into your paragraph. Alright? Then for cultural sensitivity, ESL students, cultural sensitivity, and native speaking students. Same topic. And I should say same point of comparison. Okay. Can you guess what the last paragraph is going to be? I bet you can. ESL, native speaking students, with the rhetorical strategies and the rhetorical strategies. Okay, this is called the point-by-point organizational strategy of compare and contrast essays. And you can find these within chapter 15 of your book, if you'd like a little reinforcement. All right, organizational style number 2, known as side-by-side. These paragraphs will be longer, but there are fewer of them. And the reason that they're longer is because you have more points of comparison. All right, so here, each paragraph is about a point of comparison, right? Grammar, culture, and rhetoric. Each paragraph is a point of comparison in point by point. Side by side, instead of using your points of comparison as your paragraph organizers, you'll use your items as your paragraph organizers. Okay? So we see here ESL students and native speaking students. Right? And then you will have your full points of comparison within each paragraph. Grammar, culture, rhetoric. Alright, and I bet you can guess what's here. Grammar, culture, and rhetoric. This is side-by-side organization. Because you have more points of comparison, your paragraphs will be longer. Okay? Alright, so this is concluding our approach to pre-writing and essay structure of compare and contrast essays. Again, I'm looking for 500 to 800 words. And if you have questions about topics, again, please let me know. But you can follow the writing process in your book to choose a topic as well. Alright, hope you've enjoyed the video lecture, and I look forward to seeing you all after spring break. Have a great day.